Hey y'all, welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Colton here with Brandon. As we said last week, just a couple of tournaments to officially wrap up Summerfest. We did our big Summerfest recap last week, and none of these results really changed that analysis too much. But we do want to, for completion's sake, go over the three final results of the summer season. We're going to start in Philadelphia. I was in Philadelphia. Usually we go over rounds. We have not had time to record rounds. So I'll keep that brief. We went 4-2. It was Mark on his Azure Lane. Braden was on the new Bang Dream, and I just played Dragon Maid again. Braden went 4-2. Mark went 3-3. I also went 3-3. I was doing really well until I ran into Lyco, Rekko, and Cats in rounds 5 and 6. Lyco Rekko with like the hard counter to Dragon Maid, the anti-burn 4 that you just can't do anything about. And Azure Lane, I lost the Cats coin flip. So yeah, I played really well, but ended up 3-3, and that makes me a little bit sad. But that was our Philadelphia experience. Top 8, mostly usual suspects. A lot of Dolores. All of the top 3 teams had Oblivioness Dolores as their lineup. Bochi Rock, Chloe Maureen in first. Chloe Maureen in first, Brandon. 8 salvaged Hololive a week after we were talking about how maybe Hololive might not be quite there in terms of its power level in this Bang Dream Nikke meta. But here we are. It's looking pretty normal. I don't see any crazy tech in this. It's just good cards Hololive, doing good cards Hololive things.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, it's a solid deck. It's a solid 1K1 deck, and I think it can do things. It definitely has things like tap counter in there, so you have like defensive tools in the midst of it too. So
In second, Shauna Choice Door alongside that Dolores and a Nikke list. Shauna, we talked about briefly last week, and we're going to talk about it more when we get into our big season preview stuff that's coming up starting next week with the top tier, all of the deck stuff, and then 2 weeks after that, we're going to get to kind of the rest of the meta, and that's when we'll be talking about Shauna specifically. But Shauna, like, it still has good cards in it, and it still does deny damage. It's still doing its Shauna thing. It's going to at least be present in some capacity, probably for a very long time, just based on what it can play around. In third place, it was another Nikke Bang Dream, but this time with a Blue Archive list. This is a list that we've been seeing tick up more. It is kind of the board thing right now, I think. There just isn't a whole lot that's holding board. Blue Archive has an opportunity to do that. When it does it, it can do so effectively. So pretty reasonably solid list. It's also doing the slime thing where it like leans into a bigger board but does not lean into a big finisher like at all. So we'll see how that holds up. It's kind of doing a little bit of the Nikke thing where it anticipates untapping every turn a little bit. It's not Nikke. I'm not trying to say that Blue Archive and Nikke are the same thing. They're not. But it is also doing the thing where it thinks it can survive to some extent, which I think is really interesting. Because we've been living in a world where you don't live from 3-0. And we've lived in that world for a very long time. So to suddenly be like, hey, I have, neg soul counter that I run. Hey, I have a big board. It has a +6 soul counter in there as well. Like it's got defensive tools. I think the fact that a slower end game is now something you can reasonably do in this meta is very interesting, and it's a bit of a paradigm shift from what we've been seeing the last couple of years, where the game has become so bombastic at the top. Worth keeping an eye on. I think that might be, I don't know if it's a trend, but it's definitely something to notice that not every deck is doing this. Fourth place, Dual Laners Tokyo Revengers, another one of those decks that will just never go away because it does something truly, truly unique. Alongside Rurouni Kenshin, which we don't have a list for, and an Overlord. This is a very unique fourth place team. Just 3 very unique lists. It's fun to see a team like this do well at a big event. Oshinoko, 8 choice, 3 different combos, alongside another Chloe Maureen and a Biscuit. Uh, Dolores, Mirren, and Bunny Girl, 8 salvage. Ayakashi Triangle, 8 standby. The Miku Quince, which is a list that Brandon, you had mentioned you were more high on as like the future of Quince when we talked last week. So that making another top 8 alongside yet another Dolores. Dolores was the star of Philly. It was everywhere. It felt like there was a Dolores in almost every round. Um, it's a good deck. It's a really good deck. Moving on to Australia, 20 teams. Overlord, Chainsaw Man, Bang Dream. This one was the Tamori top end, which we talked about as being another very effective, very efficient top end. In second, Lyco Recco, the Dorothy Nikkei top end, which is something that we haven't seen a lot since the start of the season, but there it is, alongside the trial deck finisher in an 8 pants free run list, which is again one of those kind of middle of the road decks that has a lot of efficiency, has a lot of speed, and in the right hands can do quite well for itself. Third place, Dolores, Ruby, and another 8 standby Ayakashi Triangle. It's starting to make its way up. This is another one of those decks that's starting to kind of creep up a little bit. It's got a really fun package, a really fun and interesting finisher. I think that deck's interesting. I don't know if it's going to make its way into a prominent place in the singles meta, but it's definitely something that we're going to have to talk about when we do our All of the Decks series. In fourth place, another Chainsaw Man, second top 4 for Chainsaw Man in Melbourne. Another Tamori Bang Dream, so 2 top 4s for Tamori in Melbourne as well, alongside an 8 choice Lyco Recco. You don't see the 8 choice Lyco Recco too often. I think that with Lyco Recco having a little bit more success in competitive play in the last couple of months, people are starting to explore the set a little bit more. This is Negsoul board builder kind of thing. So, again, maybe another one of those decks that could slide into that, not necessarily trying to close the game from deep in level 2, but is rather comfortable playing a game where it anticipates untapping. First top we've seen for it, I'm not going to put too many eggs in that basket, but it's at least an interesting thing that fits into that archetype. Rest of top 8, we see an Overlord. We see a couple more Nikkeis, including a Bunny's Nikkei, the bar top end, playing that with 6 standby triggers, which I think is really interesting. So trying to cheat out some level 2 back rows and some level 3 advantage just to try to take some of the cost out of playing that expensive finishing package. Still, obviously, a very, very explosive package, and here is good enough to be on a top 8 team. 3 more Bang Dreams, 2 Dolores, and a Tamori, so clearly Tamori really popular in the land down under, alongside another Chainsaw Man in top 8 as well. One of Venus Link, Bunny Girl, Dal, Choice Standby, an 8 Salvage Lyco Recco, and an 8 Bar Project Sakai. Spain, another Licorice Recoil. It's a real deck. Licorice Recoil is going to matter. It's been doing really well recently, and you gotta be there for it. You gotta know it's there. Next to an Overlord and a Taki Tamori Bang Dream list. In second, Ayakashi Triangle, 8 Pants Ayakashi Triangle, a different Ayakashi list. So 2 different Ayakashi lists topping over the last weekend. Another Licorice Recoil, and a Biscuit. In third, Slime, Dolores, Nikkei. In fourth, this one, another fourth place team that's kind of all over the place. The 8 Pants Dengeki list next to another Dual Laners in fourth place, and Persona 3 Salvage Choice. So again, this is a bit of a smaller regional, a lot like Melbourne, so you might see a little bit more different stuff in top 4, but a lot of fun stuff in top 4. This is an interesting meta for fun stuff, especially in these smaller regionals. Rest of top 8, pretty diverse. We see a pair of Bocchi the Rocks, but everything else is just a one of, it looks like. Azure Lane, Overlord, Tokyo Revengers, one more Biscuit, one more Tamori Bang Dream, an 8 choice Bunny Girl, an AOT Salvage Choice, the Ram Lethal Guilty Gear list, an 8 Pants Spy Family, and 8 Pants Oshi no Ko. So a couple of things that are playing sets that are pretty normal, but packages that we wouldn't expect to see: the 8 choice Bunny Girl and the 8 Pants Oshi no Ko. Dual laners, again, just kind of showing up. I think that as we get to the end of the season, I think that maybe dual laners is showing that it's got a little bit more of a better situation going into this meta than it did before. Maybe before the hits, maybe the Quince and Bunny Girl hits in particular might have freed up Tokyo Revengers a little bit. I don't know. I'd have to ask a Tokyo Revengers player how they feel about that. But it does seem that Tokyo Revengers is very much back on the table as something that you can play and have some success with in this format. The Nikkei list is pretty much the Nikkei list. Like we talked about this, like it's Modurdia Biscuit, but it's only so Biscuit, right? It's very Alice. It's very situational. Exactly how you play that end game. A lot of Licorice Recoil though this last weekend. But yeah, we're gonna talk more about all of this in detail in a week. This was kind of a special clock talk where we, instead of doing a different video, we did another clock talk because of how much there is to talk about. Wanted to get these tournament results out of the way.
Yeah, like especially one thing we saw, especially wrapping up the end of the year. I think the biggest highlight that I think you alluded to, but just wanted to reiterate, was the lack of Quince coming into the final stages here, which you alluded to with with the ban list already, but just the distinct lack of Quince going into it, I think, is actually like noticeable here at the top tables.
Oh yeah, if you're playing Quince, you are not playing 8 standby. That is for sure. That is for sure. 8 standby is very dead. It only took like 3 rounds of hits for it to be dead, but it is definitely off the table. No one is playing it, it appears. Which makes sense. I mean, that's a lot of hits. That's a lot of hits into a meta that it wasn't necessarily that kind to it anyway. So when you have to deal with, in addition, all of these other hits, that's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. So I'm not gonna begrudge anyone for bailing on quintessential quintuplets at this juncture, given how extensive these hits have been over the past several months. But yeah, I'm curious to see if your prediction about the Miku list rings true, and if that is in fact the list that people turn to if they do want to play Quince going into 2026. But yeah, we will talk a lot more about a lot of these decks starting next week. This is kind of a special clock talk in the middle of the schedule, in between where our clock talks normally go. We added an additional one instead of a different video because we wanted to get through these final tournament results so that next week we could focus on all of the decks. We're going to talk about the best decks in the format: Bang Dream and Nikkei, and then what else might be like the direct competitors to those decks going into this fall season. And then 2 weeks after that, we're going to have part 2 where we talk about everything else that matters. So be sure to join us for those. That's all we have for this time. Thank you so much for joining us. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and have a good one.
We'll see you then.